Welcome to an evening with Roots and Branches and our special guest, Aaron Niequist. I'm Susan Carson. I'm an author, speaker, podcaster, and tonight, most importantly, I am the founder and director of Roots and Branches Network here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Welcome to my living room. And wherever you are tonight, thank you so much for spending the next 45 minutes or so with us. And as we begin, I just want to ask you a question that feels really important to ask in this time that we're living in right now. How are you doing? And how is your soul? Tonight, we're going to give you a taste of our ministry. We're going to open up safe space for you to encounter Jesus through a spiritual practice. And it's my prayer that this brings renewed peace and a sense of rootedness again into your life in these crazy, chaotic, traumatic, deconstructed days that we're living in. There has never been a greater need for listening, for safe spaces, for listening, for healing prayer, for spiritual practices that root us again in the love of Christ. So let's also be straight up and just all say together, yes, this is a fundraiser, so there will be an ask tonight for your support, but there will be much more. We'll share vision and we'll share a very special guest as you get maybe a new or bigger sense of what can happen when together we open safe spaces for transformational encounters with Jesus through listening and healing prayer, as we create more and bigger spaces that are noise-free, shame-free, formula-free, Christ-centered, and spirit-soaked. We see amazing things happen.
So I liken it to driving a car versus taking like an airplane or a subway. It requires your participation. You are getting, signals and direction, but you're doing the work. The way that the facilitators keep leading you right back to Jesus, and you have to listen and seek for yourself versus other people telling you what they sense and what they hear and what they believe. So you're just fully engaged in that process, which makes it more potent. And every part of the process is choreographed by the Holy Spirit. And you are invited into the dance. And it's just intimate. It is safe. It is super encouraging and transformative. I have experienced multiple healings and takeaways that have brought me into freedom. So the first one was getting prayer from bitterness and unforgiveness. God really showed me my husband's heart and what he intended, for our family and my heart. Just being able to really examine my heart and see his pure heart for me, it just almost erased the root of bitterness, or plucked it up and just put me on a different course. So I was able to interact with my husband in a loving and positive way. I think my most favorite takeaway from this experience so far has been God redefining my perception of his provision, helping me see that He wants me to operate from a different perspective, which is abundance versus lack. I'm like a walking billboard. Every person that I have the opportunity to tell about Roots and Branches, I do. I feel like through these experiences, I'm more convinced that he's concerned about everything that concerns me, every detail.
Over nearly a decade, we've had the honor of praying with hundreds and hundreds of people just like Tracy, and hearing their stories, just as you heard hers, stories of powerful and lasting transformation. As we get to meet with people one-on-one and in groups, and as we equip churches and ministries and communities, we see healing space open up, transformational space. And we're excited to share with you tonight a vision for creating more and bigger spaces for healing. Your support is more crucial now than ever. And in the days and times we're living in, the need for these safe spaces and for deep healing and care of the soul has never been greater. So would you pray and consider how you might give to support this ministry? Your gifts enable us to meet with people one-on-one in personal ministry sessions, just like what Tracy described. Your gifts enable us to train and equip individuals and groups and entire churches. Your gifts enable our team members to partner with ministries like Back to Back in staff and pastoral care. We are literally seeing churches and ministries transformed. So thanks for considering the gift, and as you give, you are a part of stories just like this one.
Appreciated how the experience was very much spirit-led. It did not feel scripted whatsoever, and I feel like it met me right where I was. And I'll even say that coming into it, there was some anxiety, right, of what is about to happen, what do I need to have prepared in my own mind, but just knowing that really had very little to do with me or even about the other people in the room, that it felt very much spirit-led. When I think about for our particular organization, I've appreciated it because it's given a handful of us who are involved in care ministry and prayer ministry to have a common tool. And obviously, you know, the longer you walk with the Lord, you may have different tools that you're pulling upon, but I really like having one common. And so as I think about doing pastoral care with those who I'm ministering to, I love having this additional tool. And what I've loved about it is that I feel like it leads itself to God really speaking to that particular person right where they are at. And again, sort of takes the pressure off of me wondering what the agenda is, or me trying to figure out how it is exactly that they need ministered to, but knowing that wherever they are in their walk with the Lord, and I literally have seen a number of times from newer Christians with very little interaction with hearing from God, to those who've been walking with the Lord for years, seeing how He meets them individually in those moments. And one of my favorites was a fairly newer believer who is working on our staff team at International Site, and seeing him walk through actually hearing from God for the first time, but that he was convinced at the end of that time that he had heard from God. That was huge. This young man who not a lot of faith history in his family, so just kind of still learning what this looks like to walk with Jesus, but and even sort of it felt fumbly in moments of him. So what do you see? What do you sense? And there would be pauses, and then all of a sudden something would pop, and he would say it, and we would ask, you know, what else? What more? What do you think Jesus is saying? And for him to literally, us, we never had to fill in the blanks. It was God filling in the blanks. And at the end of that time, for him to feel like the Father lavished love on him was beautiful. I think that it's very, again, Spirit-led, grace-centered, loving ministry. Again, when I even spoke to my own anxieties of the first time I was going to come and be prayed for, I would love to tell them that story, that, kind of put aside the anxiety and just to know, this is a ministry that wants to lead you into the presence of the Lord. This is a ministry that wants you to hear from the Lord, that there doesn't need to be any fear in that. And I love that I could speak confidently with wanting to direct people to come and receive ministry here.
So as we are visioning the future, we are imagining more and bigger spaces for transformation, for spiritual formation through spiritual practices. And there has been no better teacher for me in this, and there has been no one that has sparked our imaginations more in this than our special guest tonight, Aaron Niequist. So Aaron, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here. This is exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. This is fun tonight. For those of you who don't know Aaron yet, Aaron is author of the amazing book, The Eternal Current. He has a podcast by the same name, which I cannot recommend to you highly enough. He is a liturgist, a worship leader, husband to Shauna, dad to Mac and Henry. I have all that right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Impressive.
And we're excited to have you, to just talk with you tonight and have you share with us your journey in this whole realm of spiritual practices and encounter and spiritual formation. So as we get started, I just want to ask you the same question I asked our viewers a few moments ago, which is how are you? How is your soul? How is your family? We are in the midst of some very challenging, crazy days right now.
Yeah, man. It's a heavy question. I was just, before we were starting, I was just mentioning that, we live in Manhattan. I'm a seminary student here in New York City. And in March 15th, my family and I jumped in a rental car and said, we're going to get out of the city for a couple weeks as this pandemic kind of takes hold, especially here in Manhattan. And that 2-week trip turned into 5 months.
Gosh.
And so we just came back 5 days ago. So we're just back in the city.
Wow.
And I would say, like everybody, March was terrible. It was scary. And, we had a lot of friends who were sick. No one died, thankfully. But we had a lot of friends who had the virus, and very scary. And then the summer, some of the fear subsided, but the unknown is just still so high. And so we have moments where we're excited about who knows what we're going to do. It's an adventure. And then we have moments where like, what are we going to do? What's the world going to look like 6 months from now?
Yeah.
So I would say, has this been the best summer ever? No. It's been a hard summer.
Yes.
Have there been moments of beauty and connection with our family? And Shauna, the boys, and I, are we more connected than ever? Absolutely. So,
That's beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, you all did an amazing, as a family, you did a practice on Facebook Live, right, together around the
Yes.
Lord's Prayer. I just
Yeah.
loved that you guys as a family were doing that together.
It was really fun. We've never really done anything like that. I this summer, one of my projects was recording a Lord's Prayer liturgy, about a 25-minute invitation to pray and practice the Lord's Prayer. And so we just said, well, let's do it as a family and invite people Facebook Live to join us. And it was really fun.
I love that. Yeah, and people can find that on your website, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on Facebook. I think it's still live at A New Liturgy. But yeah,
Awesome.
please join us.
Awesome. Yes. So one of the questions that we are always asking ourselves as a ministry, that a question that's important to us since we're Roots and Branches, we talk about roots a lot.
Yeah.
And I wonder what's been helpful for you in this season, what's been helping you stay rooted and grounded in God's love. And that can be crazy, silly stuff and also serious stuff.
Well, I'll give you a not surface answer, a lighter answer, and then a serious answer. And obviously, we're not going to talk about the serious thing, so I'll just name it rather than like lead us into a 2-hour conversation about this. But the surface thing is, first, get off my screen and get outside. I do not need to look at a screen ever again, and I've got to feel the sun and the wind and smell something different than the inside of a house. So that's one that's been, I say it's light. It's been really, really important. And then I think the deeper one that really surprised me is the anxiety of this season uncovered some unprocessed grief that I knew cognitively it's in there, but I think just the combination of all the fear and the move and what's happening in the world uncovered some deep things that I realized I hadn't gone all the way into yet. And so creating space, even though I don't want to enter into some of that grief has been really difficult on the front end. Yeah. But then has created some brand new spaces that I didn't know could be there. So maybe those two things.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I can relate to that. I'm sure a lot of people watching can relate to when our world starts to deconstruct and the things we usually rely on, including the structure of our lives, is gone. Things start to open up inside of us, right?
Yep.
And then there's an invitation.
Distract myself like I usually can.
Yes.
And so I was forced to deal with some reality.
Yeah. I think that's one of the hard gifts maybe of this time that we're in.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep. I appreciate your honesty with that.
Yeah.
Well, we'll jump around a bit. We did ask folks who pre-registered to watch tonight if they had a question for you, and you alluded to being back in New York City. So Susan from Edgewater, Colorado says, I'd love to know how you ended up in seminary in New York City. Are you studying to become an Episcopal priest?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for asking. It was kind of a wild story. The short answer is no. I don't think I'm going to become an Episcopal priest. I don't think I'll end up joining the Episcopal Church, although I really respect it and am learning a ton from my Episcopalian friends and professors, and so I really respect it. I don't think I'll end up a priest. To be honest, this journey began. Our life was really up in the air, and my wife and I have been talking about an adventure for like 10 years. Like, when are we going to do the big adventure? Wow. And I was visiting a friend here in Manhattan, and he's like, hey, I just moved onto this campus. I'm taking these classes. Come visit. And we just walked around, and it was like, are you kidding? This is Manhattan? This green space. And so my friend said, hey, come visit. Come have a drink with one of our friends. And so we went over to their apartment, sat down, introducing ourselves. And the friend said, yes, well, I'm the dean here at the seminary. What would you like to study, Aaron? And it was like, we were totally tricked. But the more we talked and heard what they're trying to do these days, they're really trying to move beyond. He told me, he said, we're not just trying to create Episcopal priests for the world. We're trying to create Christians for the planet. I mean, it was just a real ecumenical, mission-focused. And so it's been great. I have 2 more semesters, and I'm really enjoying the learning.
That's awesome. What a great opportunity to just soak in all of that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful. So I'm curious, this journey for you into this whole realm of spiritual practices. I mean, this isn't
Yeah.
new. Sometimes we can talk about it and it can sound like it's the new trendy thing, but this is not new. This is ancient practices we're talking
Yes.
about.
Yes.
But for you, really, you've invested so much of your life these past years developing
Yeah.
the practice community at Willow Creek and then writing the book and the podcast. So I'm curious about your journey in this and how you
Yeah.
come to this.
Oh, yeah. Well, by profession, I'm a worship leader. That's where I've spent most of my time doing. So right out of college, started as a worship leader at a church, and very kind of like non-liturgical, evangelical rock band kind of things. And I really enjoy so much of that. But I realized maybe, 7 or 8 years in, that I loved what we were doing and I believed in it, but it was just one really narrow slice of the whole kingdom invitation. And this happened largely when I was a part of a church called Mars Hill in Grand Rapids, Michigan for a number of years. And when I got there, I showed up with all my kind of rock songs. And again, those are good. There's nothing,
Sure.
There's not a bad form and a new cool form. But all I had was this one. It's like I was trying to paint this beautiful Van Gogh painting with one single color and one paintbrush. And I just realized, man, there's got to be so much more. And so I began just exploring other traditions. What do our Pentecostal sisters and brothers do when they gather? What do our Catholic brothers and sisters do to open themselves up to God and start studying different liturgical forms and styles? And it was just like the blinders were coming off. And I was like, there is this enormous, huge community, like for 2,000 years, like you said earlier, like we're not making this up. And they have all these different practices and all these different ways of engaging God. And I remember I was explaining it to my wife, Shauna, and I was trying to explain, and I was hemming and hawing why we're doing all these different things. And finally she goes, oh, wait. So as a worship leader, you basically want to serve a well-balanced meal every Sunday. And I just remember thinking, that's it. I've been serving one kind of meal every Sunday, wondering why my community wasn't getting healthier.
Wow.
And that, as a worship leader, started expanding into my life. In my personal life, I was taught pretty much one spiritual practice, and that was what we called a quiet time. I don't know if that's language you use.
Sure.
And it's great. I still do it all the
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
We'd read something from the text and then spend some time journaling a prayer about it. What a wonderful practice. But it's the only one I had. And so I had all these areas of human life and just being a broken human being on the planet that I didn't know how to bring into God's presence because it didn't quite fit into the one practice I had.
Yes.
And so learning about centering prayer and learning about lament and learning the centrality of gratitude and worship. And just suddenly I was kind of filling up my spiritual toolbox with all these different tools. And it's been really life-changing. I hope that doesn't sound like a cliche. I don't mean it as a cliche. It has changed my life.
Yes.
Filling up this toolbox. And maybe the one thing I would say about spiritual practices, about this toolbox that has been really central is these spiritual practices, all these things in the toolbox, don't cause God to do anything.
Yes.
God is already doing everything. These practices are just multiple different ways to humbly open up to what God's already doing. And so when I've got myself into trouble on this journey, It's when I've been like, okay, I need God to answer these 3 prayers. All right, I'm going to work really hard on my examine, on my centering prayer, something like a transaction. I'm going to earn God's a vending machine or something. God is not a vending machine.
Yes.
And the good news is we're not trying to convince God to do anything. God's already doing
He's doing it.
Pouring blessing. God is as close as the air we breathe, whether we know it or not.
Yes.
But these practices help kind of open our eyes to what's already true.
That's so good and so true. And that has been so true for me. And I can be a little slow sometime because I feel like I sort of backed into this whole world of spiritual practices as we as a ministry are sitting with people and opening space to listen to them and help them listen to God. And one day not that long ago I realized, well, that's just another spiritual practice. Like anytime we have all these ways to open space for ourselves and for others where we can encounter God. And in those encounters, incredible healing of the soul can happen, healing of the spirit, even healing of the body.
It's so true.
And I wonder in your experience how you've seen that connection between the healing that happens for us as we enter into these kind of spaces with the Lord.
Yeah. A general comment, and then I'll tell you one very specific story. When we started the practice, which was just a community on Sunday nights at Willow Creek, where we said our mission was, we want to become the kinds of people who don't just believe things about Jesus, but are learning how to rearrange our lives in order to put his words into practice. And so we said every Sunday night we're going to gather and learn how to put these things into practice. Okay, so we would get people asking, well, how do you judge if it was effective? Like, what are your metrics? Especially at Willow Creek. What are your metrics?
Sure, yeah.
And I just said, I refuse for our metrics to be how many people showed up. You could do an iPad giveaway and get 1,000 people to show up. Sure. That's not success. It's not about numbers in that way. And so we started talking about what would be the meaningful things. And we started talking about things like, well, if a year from now, every one of us were more likely to forgive when wounded, as opposed to fight back. Well, that's a metric I could get behind. Jesus did teach, love those who, bless those who curse you, love your enemies, and we believe that's true. We rarely do it, but what if we could become the kinds of people who would do it? And so we started talking about those kinds of metrics. And I don't know how you actually measure them. It's pretty invasive. So how's your forgiveness going? But those were the outcomes that we were really passionate about. In terms of healing, I immediately think of my friend Joe. Joe is the father of one of my friends. He was actually in our youth group for a number of years. And after the first night of the practice, Joe met me afterwards, and he's like a big Chicago guy, kind of like a tough guy.
Yeah.
And he had tears in his eyes, which I'd known the family a long time. I'd never seen that. And he said, the last time I was in this chapel was the wake for my wife about 6 months ago.
Wow.
And he said, I haven't been able to kind of make my way back into this church or any church since. Yeah. And he said, but my son, told me what was going on, and I decided to come. And he would say, if he was watching this, he would say, the practice saved my life.
Wow.
Which for us, there was no sense of, wow, we're amazing. We didn't save his life.
Right, sure.
God saved his life.
Yes.
And his choice to show up and keep creating that space and keep bringing that heart that had just been, 6 months earlier, broken to bits, over and over, slowly, when he would bring those shards of his heart into that holy space, God would just start putting things back together. It was such a moving story.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, and that's the kind of thing that we get to see
That's
over
right.
and over again. And it's
Yep.
it's such an honor and privilege. It feels like just
Yeah.
to be in the room when it happens,
right.
because it really has nothing to do with us.
Yeah, well, it has something to do with us in that we open the
We
space.
create it, sure.
But it has nothing to do with our power. Like
Yes.
we don't generate any of that.
Yes.
But we open the door.
Yes.
And the people who walk in need to choose to walk in, but all the work is God's.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you to open that door, open that space for us this evening.
Yeah.
But first, I wonder if you came with anything else on your heart that you just wanted to share with us tonight.
Yeah, well, I mean, this conversation covered so much of it.
Yeah.
Maybe the only thing I would name is I've been thinking a lot about the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, compilation of Jesus' greatest teachings. And the final, the way he closed the Sermon on the Mount, right at the end, he said, "If any of you hear my words and put them into practice, you'll be like a man who built his house on the rock and survived the storms of life." And the two things that just jump out at me is, first, we are in a season of storms.
Oh my gosh,
Like 2020,
yes. Yeah.
like overlapping storms,
Yeah.
international, our country, personal storms. I mean, and so those words have become really meaningful because they remind us we can survive these storms. Like we really can build our lives on rock and survive. And what's beautiful is Jesus tells us exactly how. He says, if you hear my words and put them into practice. He didn't say if you hear my words and believe them. He didn't say if you hear my words and tell everybody they're true. He said if you hear my words and put them into practice. And so that's why I'm so excited, Susan, about what you and your community are creating. Not just a set of new things to fill our brains with, although new ideas are really important, but not as the end goal to change our thinking, but to change our entire lives through these practices.
Yes.
And maybe that's a good way to end that part.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's beautiful. Well, I would love for you to just take the next few minutes and do that with us, and just lead us into that space with the Lord. So, would you do that for
Beautiful.
us now?
I'd be honored. I always love, it's one thing if you talk about why we shouldn't just talk, we should practice. But it's entirely another to say, all right, let's stop talking and actually do it.
Yes.
So I'm really glad you have invited us to spend some time. So this is probably about a 5 to 10 minute practice.
Perfect.
And so I'd invite every one of us, whoever is able, if you could place both feet on the floor. And if you could sit up in your chair, not rigid and overly formal, but just in an open way. Susan, you've heard me say, my spiritual director loves to say, when you pray, say to God with your body what you're saying with your heart and with your mind. And so I want to give us just a couple seconds to be conscious of your posture and to just say to God with your body, I'm open. I'm here. Maybe bowing your head helps you do that. Or maybe lifting your head. Whatever you can do with your body to say, God, I am open to you right now. Would you take in a deep breath? Just notice the air filling your lungs, and then release that air back into the world. And as you keep breathing, let us become aware again that we are already fully immersed in God's presence. The God who loves us and loves every single person on earth. The God who is as close as the air we breathe. In our practice this evening, I would love to invite us into something that I'm just simply calling a daily bread embodied practice. You know, right at the middle of the Lord's Prayer, Jesus invites us to ask God for what we need today. Not tomorrow's bread, not next month's bread, but the bread, the food, the sustenance, the help, the grace, the mercy we need today. And it's built on Jesus' deep faith that God is a good parent who loves to give God's kids what we need. And so in that faith, I would love to invite us to hold 3 prayers before God, 3 daily bread prayers before God. First, we'll hold one, a prayer for our world. And then we'll hold a prayer for someone in our lives, a friend or a family member. And then finally, we'll hold a prayer for ourselves, a way that we desperately need daily prayer today. And because we're not just brains on a stick, because we are fully embodied images of our Creator, we're going to do this in our bodies. So I invite you to open your hands and kind of hold your hands down by your waist. And with your hands open, allow God to bring your attention to one need in the world that you want to pray for tonight. One way that the world needs daily bread for today. Maybe it's something in our country, the divisions, the racial reckoning. Maybe it's something going on in our world, whether it's war or poverty, or allow the Spirit to direct your thoughts to one deep need in our country or world. And with your hands open, just imagine that need in your hands. Try to be as specific as possible. Now, if we could lift our hands up by our voices, I want to give us about 30 seconds to tell God about this deep need in our country or world. And again, we're not informing God. God already knows. But tell God why this need matters to you. And now finally, as an act of trust, as an act of faith, as an act of hope, would you lift your hands now above your head as a way to say, God, we release this need to you. We ask that you would provide the daily bread in this situation with these sisters and brothers. We release this prayer for our country or world into your able and loving hands. Amen and amen. You can bring your hands back down. Secondly, would you again open your hands and hold them by your waist? We want to pray for someone in our lives, someone we love, family member, a neighbor, friend, someone who needs daily bread today. Allow God to bring one person to mind. Again, be very specific. Try to picture their face. Invite God to draw your attention to one specific person. And again, bring your hands and this person up to your voice. And let's take about 30 seconds to tell God why this person matters to you and why they need daily bread today. Again, we're not informing God. We're simply sharing our heart, our mutual love for this person. And finally, as an act of trust and faith, we lift our hands as a way to lift this person into God's able, strong, merciful, wise hands. God, we release this person to you. Amen and amen. We can bring our hands down. One final prayer, because it is what Jesus invited us to do at the center of the Lord's Prayer, to ask God for the daily bread that we need. Again, not for tomorrow's bread, for today. And so if one final time you to open your hands down by your waist, is there a need that you have today that you want to hold before God in this moment? We all have many needs, of course, but is there one that is kind of burning in you right now? One that maybe you pray about it every day and you want to bring it again. Maybe you haven't yet articulated this need in God's presence. What is it? What is the daily bread you need today? And again, we lift our hands up by our voices. We lift this prayer. And let's take about 30 seconds to pour our hearts out to God, to tell God why this matters to us, to ask God for the daily bread. that we know we need. And one more act of trust and faith and hope. We lift our hands as a way to say, God, we trust you. We know you want to meet this need, and we know you can meet this need. And we ask you for our daily bread today. And finally, can we place both hands over our hearts, both our physical hearts and the center of our beings? And I would love to guide us in the Lord's Prayer. Would you join me? Jesus taught his disciples to pray, and he said, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
Aaron, thank you so much. It never ceases to amaze me how just a few moments of opening up safe, sacred space with the Lord, the peace that comes, the settledness that comes, the rootedness that comes, the healing of the soul that comes in that. So thank you so much for leading us in this. Thank you for sharing this time for us. Thank you for all the work that you have done and invested in the body of Jesus. And we are the beneficiaries of that. And I know many others are as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, honored to be a part of this night with you. This is an exciting moment in all that you and your community are doing. So glad to be here.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we could sit in this space all night and it would feel like a spa, but I'm going to close us out here tonight. So I just want to let those of you who have spent this time with us, first I want to thank you for spending this time with us. Secondly, I want you to know that we're here to serve you. So on our website, rootsandbranchesnetwork.com, you can ask for an appointment for listening and healing prayer. You can find out about events we're having. You can invite us to your group. The last Wednesday night of this month, we're having a Zoom night of healing, which will be an extended time of spiritual practice. So we'd love for you to join us. And if you go to that website and click on the Give tab, you can make your gift there as well. So thank you for praying for us. Thank you for giving. Thank you for making what you've experienced tonight possible for more and more and more people. I want to thank our event sponsors, our platinum, gold, and silver sponsors. They'll be listed somewhere under the screen on the page. So please take a moment and look and see who's there, and particularly note the businesses that are helping to support this ministry. And one last point of business is our door prize winners. So for those of you who pre-registered ahead of time, we drew 3 names and you'll get to pick. There's a beer basket from Narrow Path Brewing. You could pick wine, bourbon, desserts. It's all up to you. So our winners are Sue Stiles in Cornelius, North Carolina. Hi, Sue. And I may not pronounce these next 2 names right, but Jani or Yanni Viox and Lindsay Oliva, both in Cincinnati. You're our winners, so we'll be in touch with you in the next few days to figure out how we can get those door prizes to you. So thanks again, Aaron. Thanks all of you for spending this time with us. And I bless you to live deeply rooted in love.